Welcome to the Wardenberg Family Farm with Don and Brenda.
Today's video is going to be a very special one. It's a very exciting topic, compost.
Nice day for compost, isn't it? Well, we've had a lot of requests for information on how we manage and handle our compost here on the farm. So Brenda's going to join me because we're partners in this, and we're going to talk about how we do compost.
This is actually our finished or almost finished compost pile. Now, we're going to show you how we get it to this point. It's actually a pretty good system. We actually have 4 compost piles. This is pile number 1, and it is basically the accumulator pile or the dump pile or the fresh pile.
And it's located right outside the garden, so we can either use the tractor with the bucket to haul weeds when we have a lot, or as you saw in the opening clip, I just run it with a wheelbarrow and drop it here. So we'll gather it together here, depending on the time of year, how long before we shipped it over, because we have 3 different working piles here, and they're all in a row right in front of the garden area. Now we chose to put these piles right on the earth, and we've pulled away most of the topsoil so it's firm, but I think it's better to have it right on the ground rather than to have it on a concrete slab.
Yeah.
Because it allows earthworms and critters from below to come up and get in it.
Yeah.
You know? It's also in an area where we're guaranteed that any runoff from these piles would not go back into the garden. So we have it captured here in front. So if we have fresh manure in here, it's not going to find its way into the garden.
Yeah. And this pile consists of anything like garden waste, kitchen waste, grass clippings, leaves, and manure. Anything that we want to put in the compost pile.
That's the superpower of this,
That's
isn't
the
it?
superpower.
The chickens, your chickens.
Mm-hmm. We have chicken manure and
cow manure. And I'm going to take you inside the barn so you can see where the manure comes from and how we gather it up.
You can be glad you can't smell that part.
All right, it's time to clean out the barn, so that's my trigger to move all the piles and to stir them up. Now I see folks talking about the lazy way to make compost, but if you're doing it with a pitchfork, that takes some effort. So it's really a matter of scale. If you have a small operation, the pitchfork is fine. We have to move a lot of manure, as you'll see, and stir up these piles, so it makes it a lot easier with the tractor. So what I'm going to do is stir up the first pile, and then I'm going to take the accumulator pile and put it with the first composting pile. So again, there's 4 piles total. The first one's accumulator. This is really the kind of the first real working one, and then it goes to the final 2 on the other side of the aisle here, which are kind of in the finished stages. So let's get this stirred up and combine these piles. Well, it's a hot summer day in July, but we got to work the barn. And the manure from these guys, we have 2 steers, that's what drives the outstanding results we get in our garden from the compost that comes from the manure. Right, guys? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside for a few minutes while we clean out the barn. It's hot and they don't like the direct sun. So we're going to try to do this as quickly as we can. So let's get her done. All right, got the barn cleaned out, so I have a whole new pile for accumulation pile started. We have a very nice second pile, which is really the good beginning of all the composting. And now the last two piles are pretty close to finished. This one, we have a temperature gauge in there, and we're about at 120. Ooh, it's kind of warm. About 120, so it's getting pretty close to finishing up. So what I need to do now, I'm going to pull the tarp back. I'm going to stir it up to make sure we get oxygen in the lower levels and mix things together. I'm going to do that on these last two. Should only take a minute or two. So this is actually scraps of rubber roofing. So it's pretty heavy and it doesn't blow away as easy with the storms. But we like to keep all the excess rain off of it. It is a little damp in there, but we don't want to wash out all of the nitrogen and all the good minerals. Okay, this is the finished compost pile, and the one that's almost finished, I stirred them up good. Don't want too much of this. There's a little bit of blocks in there, so you break them up. And but it looks like great compost in here. It should be ready to go. And I guess the real test is, you don't really have any odor, do you, Brenda?
No, it just smells like rich soil.
It does. Just smells like soil, like if you were sitting in the woods. And there's a little bit of dampness in there, but I think we're going to get a rain in 2 days, a light rain. So I'm going to let it open, and then I'm going to put the tarps back over it. But this could be used anytime in the market garden. So this pile here is, we started it last fall, so it's about 10 months and it's fully done. So our methods are easy, but they're not necessarily the fastest. If you really work a compost pile hard, you could get compost in a month. If you chop up leaves, chop up grass, and you turn it every other day and monitor the moisture. But ours is a little different because we have animal manures in there, and we want it to go slowly to make sure that everything is fully composted and digested. So it's working for us, isn't it, Brenda?
It's working very well.
Yeah, you get tremendous vegetables without using a lot of man-made you know, chemicals and fertilizers.
Pretty much without using any.
Yeah. All right, now that we did all the outside work, I think we're going to go somewhere comfortable and talk a little bit more about our compost experience. Well, we moved around a lot of compost today, didn't we?
The tractor moved around a lot of compost.
Well, the barn's cleaned out, and we moved number 1 pile, the accumulation pile, over to 2, and I think we mixed that up good.
Yep, it's starting to compost.
Yeah, and I'm pretty happy with number 3 and number 4.
4 is beautiful.
Yeah, the temperature on number 3, it's down to 120, which has a little bit more to go, but that's good. And then the temperature on number 4, which is pretty, you know, finished, is about 100, a little less than 100. And considering it was 85 degrees out today, you know, the bacterial work is about finished in there. So what are you going to do with this compost?
Well, the next time it moves is when I use it in the fall. When my things are done in the market garden, all my crops, I take compost and I put a couple inches over each bed, and then I cover that with a leaf grass mixture and just kind of keep the bed covered for the winter. And over winter then, it all settles and starts to decompose even more, and I'm ready to plant in the spring.
So we take a pretty basic approach to composting. We don't really make compost. That's a natural process. We just put the things close proximity and let nature take its course. So we basically need a nitrogen source, which are the greens. And for us, the nitrogen source also includes the manure. Now, while it's not green, it is counted as a green a nitrogen source. And there's also the manure and the urea in there mixed in with the straw. So that's already kind of a 50-50 mix coming out of there. And then we put, what else? Put a lot of weeds in?
Yeah, and only weeds with no seeds. That's one thing I'm careful about. If I have weeds that have a lot of seeds on, they go to the burn pile. And I'm also careful if anything's diseased from the garden, that goes to the burn pile. Or if it's an invasive weed, like bindweed or something that's crazy, I put that in the burn pile. So, but other than that, pretty much everything goes in the compost. Okay. And I do put tomatoes in. Yes, I get some volunteers the next year, but that's not a big deal.
No. So then we put the browns in, and you know, there's already some browns, quite a bit mixed in because of the straw that's in there. And it doesn't, you hear different formulas online, and it doesn't really matter. Probably the 50-50 mix gets you the fastest result, but more of the formulas you hear 2-to-1, 3-to-1, or even 4-to-1.
Yeah, and we're kind of bad. We don't really follow a formula, but it works. I mean, it just, by the time we're ready to use it, it's decomposed, it's good soil. So, so far it's working for us.
We make sure it gets stirred, but probably only once or twice a month. And that it's got water. And then the water control on the ones that are finished, that's something we didn't do early on, and it was awful to see all the
nutrients just running out whenever it was raining.
Yeah, and then it gets too wet. So I think with the rubber roofing scraps that we put over it, that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and then we can control when we get water on it and how much.
Yeah, so nature pretty much takes its course, but there are a few things that are critical, and that is more to do with what not to do or what not to put in your compost pile.
Well, I talked about the weeds and stuff, but another thing is you got to be careful nothing with chemicals. I mean, we do get, most everything comes from the farm here, and that's all organic, but we do get leaves from various people, and we just make sure it's from families that have promised us they don't use anything on their yards, their trees, anything. They're all organic in their households. Yeah,
so, because those leaf bags, when we go pick them up, they oftentimes will have grass in them as well.
Which is nice.
But if you get treated grass and you put that in there,
it could kill your plants.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we had a little bit of that the first year. We weren't as diligent.
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah,
we were still learning. At this point, no, I'm very careful because people offer us leaves and offer us grass, and that's my first question. Do you use any kind of lawn treatment, any kind of chemicals in your yard? So if they do, it's like, I'm sorry, we can't use it.
And we use 2 kinds of manure, which comes from the farm here. And you have to be careful getting manure horse manure, cow manure, and other, if it comes from a farm and they spray their hay with broadleaf killer, that can pass its way through. And
it can go through the animal, the horse or whatever, into the manure and into your garden if you're not careful.
Yeah. So is there anything else that we guard? The seeds and the chemicals.
That's the biggie.
And we don't use manure from any animals that are carnivores, dogs and cats.
Dogs, cats,
or even
that kind of
pigs
stuff.
and naturally humans. Don't use any of that.
Yeah.
But I think whatever we're doing is working, and I encourage you to try it. And it shouldn't be intimidating.
No. No. And I mean, it's worked for us because all the vegetables are doing well, flowers. I mean, everything is just growing amazingly. And it has gotten better every year. I mean, we've been here 5 years, and every year we've put, compost on the beds. And each year it's gotten better. So we have, right at this point now, we have some nice soil on all the beds and in the tunnel.
So compost is great stuff, but you can't depend on it to be your sole amendment. You really do need to do soil tests.
You should do soil testing. We're bad. We haven't done that because it's all been working really well. But you should test your soil and then see what you do need to add to it. And we probably should do that this fall.
When we moved on the farm and we talked to other farmers, we had soil tests done
5 years ago.
We have a pretty good idea of where things need to be, but we probably should do it again over the winter.
Yeah, because the soil has changed a lot in the 5 years.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy with how things are growing. So I'm thankful for the cows and the chickens.
So, well, thank you for joining us on our compost adventure.
Exciting, huh? We'll see you in our next video.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.